It's Teacher Appreciation Week. Did you know that?
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
My education guru and blogger, Erika Sanzi, is back to talk about some test scores and where we stand in Rhode Island competitively across the country, what kind of progress we're making internally, all of that. So stay tuned. Nice to have you in for a Monday evening. Let's just start with this ridiculousness. Saturday Night Live, and honestly, you gotta give him credit for pulling this one off. This was just too much. Here's the story.
My issue is getting up to speed on the facts here. I'm about halfway there.
Today, President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, further explained inconsistencies in his defense of Mr. Trump and suggested the president might resist a subpoena from special counsel Robert Mueller, compelling him to testify under oath.
We don't have to. He's the president of the United States. We can assert the same privileges other presidents have.
Democrats say the president must cooperate.
He's going to need to comply with a subpoena. If they take that case to court, they're going to lose.
So what up, girl?
Stormy Daniels, who alleges an affair with Mr. Trump and is suing to get out of a non-disclosure agreement, appeared on TV joking about the risk her case poses to Trump's presidency.
What do you need for this to all go away?
A resignation.
Questions remain over payments Trump made to his personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, for alleged hush money paid to Daniels during the election. Giuliani says it was all legal.
Number one, it was not a campaign contribution because it would have been done anyway. Number two, even if it was considered a campaign contribution, it was entirely reimbursed out of personal funds.
I can't believe that actually just happened.
Daniels' lawyer reacted.
I think it is obvious. This is a cover-up, that they are making it up as they go along.
President Trump's advisor, Kellyanne Conway, told Face the Nation Giuliani's remarks that Trump's repayments were campaign expenditures is wrong.
The president himself characterized it as not a campaign expenditure.
She also explained why the president said no when asked if he knew about Cohen's payments to Daniels.
The president told me just yesterday that when he said no on Air Force One last month, he's talking about when the payment occurred.
They're just so all over the map that it's becoming fun now. It really is. And that Saturday Night Live decided they're going to spoof this the way they did. I hope you saw it. If you didn't, check your online sources to see the bit, because it was quite funny. One would ask, well, does this make it more of a circus atmosphere and a less than important investigation that Stormy Daniels actually went on comedy television? No. It doesn't. In fact, it plays right into the psychology of the Trump administration and how they do business, because they would love to be on that side of the yuck. So this guy, this attorney, is just, he's got their number 8 ways to Sunday, and it'd be ironic. I don't know how it's going to turn out any more than you do, right? But it'd be ironic that this investigation is the one that actually puts the president in a lot hotter water than the actual Russian collusion investigation, because this one involves dough that the president actually somehow, somewhere is involved with himself. And this idea that it's not a campaign violation, look, all you have to remember is a couple of things. Stormy Daniels, whatever happened between she and the president, happened in 2006. That the payment and the deal was made 2 weeks before the election is all you have to remember about this notion that it's just usual and sundry, taking care of Donald's dirty business. So remember that. All right, coming back home just for a second as a follow-up, because we talked a lot about it on the radio and the television. Giovanni Ferrosi, the Republican candidate almost formally announced for governor, had his civil warrant eliminated, and so that is one. I could say it's a relief for him, but he's portrayed the whole situation as a complete misunderstanding and somewhat of a conspiracy between the governor and the Providence Journal out to get him, which I think on its face is probably pretty laughable, but he's not laughing about that. He's dead serious about it. He's coming in Thursday for the television show to talk about all this, so please make a note of that. So there you have it. There's lots else going on, but I like to give Erika some time because she digs in here. Headline, USA Today, teachers get freebies, discounts this week. but not more pay. Isn't that always the grind? It's Teacher Appreciation Week in America today. Former teacher, welcome. Nice to have you.
Nice to see you.
Should pay be a conversation amidst all of this appreciation?
Depends where. I mean, it should always be a piece of the conversation, but it really depends on where you live. Oklahoma teachers do not make a living wage. Teachers in Boston make a very, very good, generous salary.
Like what?
Like probably, I would say the average teacher salary in Boston's at $90,000 or higher.
Okay. Tougher place to live economically than
Tougher
Oklahoma.
place to live for sure, but it's just not a number that's going to get sympathy from the American public. It's probably not even a number that's going to get sympathy from the people living in the state. Whereas in Oklahoma, West Virginia, places like that, we've got teachers who truly don't make a living wage. And I think that's a very different conversation than the conversation about compensation in places like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're doing in Oklahoma. I mean, interesting that we lost our superintendent to Oklahoma. Isn't that?
Well, to give you
I wonder what Deb Gist thinks about all that in Omaha. That's where she is now, right?
She's in Tulsa.
Tulsa, that's right.
Because Omaha's in Nebraska.
Oh, thank you. Monday.
But you know that things are bad.
Hold on a second. I just want to acknowledge how bad a mistake that was. Let's not let that slide. That is personally embarrassing to me, and this is the first broadcast of the week. I hope it gets better, not worse. I'm always chiding my child on geography as well.
Well, then let's make sure that she sees this episode. Anyway.
You ever been to Omaha, Nebraska? Anyway, go ahead.
Deb Gist.
I meant Tulsa.
I know what you meant. And they both end in an A. So they're easily mixed. I'm not going to say anything because I make mistakes like that all the time.
Oh, my
But anyway, Deb
goodness.
Gist. Deb Gist, kind
Deb
of a hard
Gist.
charger. She was 100% in support of the strike in Oklahoma and in support of the teachers. So that's an example of somebody where the conversation here was very different in her opinion than than what it is there. And the hard piece too that people don't realize is that teacher compensation, it's not just it's their salary, it's also their benefits, and the benefits are the price of the benefits is going up so much. So a teacher's salary might go up 1%, and that feels terrible for them. And the healthcare costs might be going up 6% per year, and so it's sort of an unsustainable model in ways.
Well, you've served on a local school committee in Cumberland, so you've seen this kind of stuff come through. Do you really think school committees have the ability to navigate this thing well?
No.
Totally overmatched, correct?
Totally overmatched. You don't have to know anything about anything to be on the school committee. I mean, you don't have to know anything about anything, I guess, to get elected to anything.
Do you have to know where Omaha is?
No, you don't have to know anything. You can have no knowledge of student achievement data. You can have no knowledge of best practices.
Right.
You can literally put out press releases riddled with spelling mistakes anytime you want. Like, no, they do not. They are overmatched. They don't know what they're doing in most cases.
Right. Usually, every town might have a really informed elected official, hopefully.
Definitely. And you might even have a few on the board, but you're never going to have them all.
So, just in general, when it comes to compensation, and we'll move past this, here in Rhode Island, the Providence Teachers Union hasn't had a raise in a while and suggests that they haven't had a real meeting with the mayor over a 9-month period of time. I don't understand that. Do you understand that?
But I don't know the details. I haven't had any conversations with any of the parties.
But the idea
I don't
that the
understand
headline that anybody can read is that they haven't had any dialogue, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. It fuels their fire. It casts kind of an idea of disrespect.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense. In general, what do you think that the population's thoughts are about teachers today? Empathetic, appreciative, unappreciative? What is it?
So there's a few things I would say. First of all, I think that in general, we love teachers. You know, all the polling shows Americans love teachers, we as parents love teachers, students love teachers, but that's kind of becomes a platitude because we also all know we didn't love all the teachers we had, and we didn't love all the teachers our children have had, right? So it's sort of one of those generalizations. So where are we with teachers? I would argue that we don't treat teachers as the professionals that they are, but that's partly because they're working within a system that doesn't treat them as professionals.
So the system doesn't treat them that way. Why would the public?
Correct.
What's wrong with the system?
The system values teachers monetarily speaking based on how many years they've had in service and how many maybe grad level credits they have, right? So, for example, my son has a phenomenal teacher this year, a teacher that I think is so amazing. I wrote about him. I nominated him for the Golden Apple Award, which he actually won because someone else nominated him before too. And he's probably, and let's just say he's in his 5th year of teaching. That makes him one of the lower paid teachers, and it also makes him most susceptible to a layoff. And yet, he's one of the best teachers that I've ever seen, and he's the best teacher my kids ever had.
But that's the collective bargaining perspective of the teachers.
Yes, but if you were to talk to the rank and file, I'm not sure that they embrace it as much as the leadership does.
So why can't they do something about that? I've asked that question for decades.
Well, that's a good question, and I can't speak for them. I was in 2 unions myself, and I certainly felt like I wanted it to be different, and I was vocal about my lack of support. I got tenure when I was 26. How crazy is that?
Did you deserve it?
Nobody deserves tenure at 26. I don't even know if they deserve it at all, but they certainly don't deserve it at 26.
All right, when we come back, we'll take a look at some Rhode Island's marks, and we'll have some geography questions as well, because obviously I need a prep. All right, so Good School Hunting is the blog. You should be reading it on a regular basis. Are you well read? Are you doing well?
It depends on the post.
You don't get a lot of responses, but I never judge responses, blogs by responses.
So Good School
What's your
Hunting,
data telling you?
Good School Hunting is one of the outlets I write for, so I sort of write for a variety of
that's yours.
Of outlets. Right, it's mine, but sometimes pieces that run there also run in other places.
I see.
So like I had a piece a couple weeks ago that ran in 4 places, including my blog. So I'd have to sort of look at all of it, but it totally depends. I was excited about how much traffic this piece got, because test scores aren't usually, they don't drive a lot of traffic generally, and this piece did well, which made me feel more confident that...
What are we saying about the test scores?
They're bad. They're bad. We're flat. We're either declining or we're flat. There's no bright spot that I can point to, other than from about, so let's just talk a little about the test. What test are we talking about, right? So these are the NAEP scores, National Assessment for Educational Progress, known as the nation's report card. It is the only way that we can look apples to apples, state to state, and over the long term at how our students are doing. They're tested in 4th grade and in 8th grade.
And do we believe that this
and it's a sample.
Is it a consensus amongst most school districts here in the state and across the nation that it's a fair assessment? Because we've had so many fights over what is the proper assessments.
In the sense that it is it's outside of the political football realm of, oh, I love this test, no, I hate this test, because it's now politically toxic, right? They've been doing it for many, many years, decades. I don't know the exact year that it started. You use a representative sample, so not all kids take it, but it's a representative sample from each state. And then you can look to see over time how students are doing in all categories. So we can look at all students, we can look at white students, black students, Hispanic students, students with disabilities, ELL, boys and girls, which has become a bit of a hot topic lately, locally. And we can see how they're doing. And as we saw some good upward movement till about 2009, 2011, and now we are either flat or on the decline.
Why?
That is a great question, and it's a little bit hard to say.
It's not a really deep question. Isn't that the only question? I mean, it's the first question of many, but it's the question.
During No Child Left Behind, that was considered to be kind of tough love for schools, and that's also when we saw improvement, and we've moved a little bit away from some of that. And, we see that we're not doing as well.
So we've taken the pedal off.
A little bit, yes, I think so. I think we've gone a little bit. I mean, let's not forget, testing is not popular, generally speaking, when we talk about it, because people like me who support it are accused of thinking that we think you can measure everything in a test.
And the teachers end up teaching to the test.
And sometimes correct.
And not giving them the total enrichment that that the kids deserve.
And so I wouldn't say
I say that with the blah, 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 because I got so exhausted back during that time about that conversation and controversy, and interestingly, as you pointed out, well, as you make your point, I'm thinking, you know what, we haven't had that argument on the radio in quite some time. It's because they're not teaching to the test anymore. Well, when Deb Gist, said, Uncle, on her rigid mandatory testing program, and then skipped town, I think around here, everyone just went, whew, right?
She wanted to do a high school exit exam, like Massachusetts has been doing since the early 90s.
Right.
I supported her 100% in that, and it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. So is that why we're not performing as well?
There are people who make the argument that when kids get to a certain age, particularly high school age, that they don't do well on tests because they don't take them seriously. And obviously, if you know that it matters for graduation, you might take it more seriously.
The statewide and/or national testing, if it has no direct implication to your success in class or to graduate, you don't worry about it.
That's the argument. I think that you can create a school culture in which students actually care about how their work reflects on their school and on their community, and that they really could, put in 100% for, what is it, 3 days, 4 days, for just a couple hours. But that is an argument that I hear from my own school committee, from my own principals, in my district, and from other people as well. They sort of accept that as like, well, they just didn't try. But then here's the argument. Well, did Barrington kids try 3 times harder than Cumberland kids?
Well, no matter what the pressure, focus element, it always seems to come out that way anyway. Is Barrington's performance leading but still down?
Yes. Well, I didn't look district to district, so I can't say for sure.
So if the overall, the overall performance is down, but it's still going to be prorated to the kind of, foundational successes, or not so much in each district, it's all going to come out somewhat the same anyway, it seems to me.
Yep.
What you never see is some district like come out of the pack and zoom up.
Florida just did that, though.
Who?
The state of Florida.
What?
They,
as a state?
They did as a state.
Against the country?
Yes. So what they did, so this is going to sound sort of in the weeds, I'm going to simplify it as much as I can, but what they do is they do adjusted scores. So they say, let's look at the demographics of every state, and let's make a prediction of how they should do based on their demographics. Poverty levels, racial makeups, etc. Well, Rhode Island very badly underperforms when you look at it that way. We don't do as well as we should do based on our demographics. Florida, on the other hand, does much better, or did much better in this last round than how they should have done based on their demographics. So what we should all be doing is saying, what is Florida doing? Let's do that.
What are they doing?
I don't know a ton about Florida because that's not one of the areas that I'm assigned to studying, but I do know that they have robust school choice programs. The alarm bells can go off now on that.
Well, no, school choice between public and private, or between public and public? Because I'm a big public and public fan. I'm not a big public and private fan.
So they have both. So they have charter schools, which are public schools, but then they also have some programs where you can, I don't want to speak out of turn, but they have some sort of either voucher or education savings accounts where you can take money, I think, and go to other schools with that. But putting it aside, there's other things that they're doing well too, that it would make sense for people like me and you and others to say, what is Florida doing? And to figure out what is replicable or replicable. Because obviously, their government functions in a different way than ours. Their state laws around education are different than ours. So you can't always just say, let's do that.
Yeah. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the gender issues that are out there. Stay with us. Our esteemed governor, who has this now 4th annual Governor for a Day, and a young lady from Charahoe won that contest again as part of the Women's Month focus that the governor does. As an educator and a female, do you support this idea that the governor runs a female, girl only Governor for a Day contest year after year after year?
So the last part of your question is the most important part. Did I support it the first year? I did. She was the first woman governor. I kind of liked this whole idea. But now, as it goes on, there's 2 things happening. One is, I don't really get why it can only be for girls, because I sort of want girls to know that they can compete with boys and still become the governor for the day.
Right.
But I also, as I look at academic data, school data, other sort of overall well-being data, we're seeing boys aren't faring well, and they're definitely not faring well as compared to girls.
Well, let's jump to that for a second. What is the disparity between boys and girls right now in the state?
So in the state, for graduating from high school in 4 years, it's 8 points. For reading, and I have to double check this right now, because in reading we've got one where they're 6 points apart and one where they're 12 or 14 points apart. And if I can look at it right now, I'll find it for you. So we see girls and boys neck and neck in math. So this whole idea that, you know, girls are bad at math and boys are great at math. Well, in the state of Rhode Island, they're within 1 point of each other. But in reading and ELA, on PARCC testing, every single grade, the girls were double digits ahead.
ELA being?
English Language Arts. So anything related to reading and writing, we're seeing double-digit disparities between girls and boys. The girls are doing better. And even on this NAEP testing...
Has it always been the case? I think it has. Girls think better than boys, at least early on, don't they?
Did you hear that? He just said girls think better than boys. I will be taking that home to my husband and my 3 sons, and I will be quoting it regularly.
I think they're more contemplative.
That may be the case, but when you have...
Take that home.
But when you have disparities in academics, disparities in dropout rates, boys drop out much more than girls, disparities in graduation rates. We know that boys commit suicide at higher rates starting in the, I mean, I hate talking about it, right? But during the school years, it happens more with boys, and as they get older during K-12, it gets, you know, 2 times as much, 4 times as much, 6 times as much. So these are important conversations to be having. 56% of the people in college are women. So I don't see the argument for the girls just have it so bad, we have to let them be governor for a day and we have to exclude boys. Not to mention that if my own sons were to ask me, why can't I apply? I don't really have a great answer for that.
Why are boys in psychological trouble more than girls?
Well, people argue about this. I would be on the side of the declining number of boys in families where there is a father in the home or a stable father figure in the child's life plays a huge role. With these mass shootings that we talk about, all except one have had no father in their lives. That's kind of, you know, something that we need to think about. I also think boys get very mixed messages. You know, it's like, be tough, don't cry, oh, but you can't play with guns, you can't even make that stick look like it's a gun. You know, it's like I just feel like the messaging, I think that we are. I mean, I don't know if you are and I am, but I think as a society we are confusing them, and we're sending them very mixed messages on what it is to be a man and how a boy should behave.
Good School Hunting, read it, just look it up, it's online. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Final word, next. Check out Tim White's story on Mayor Lewis' travel expenses. And speaking of mayoral candidates, sort of, well, the mayor is one for re-election. Kobe Dennis, who announced a while ago and has been pretty quiet, tomorrow night. See you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Thanks for watching. Good night.